Welcome to my Lasso Podcast. Let's get into it. All right, today is Thursday, and it is not Haunting Adeline Day. As you've seen from the title of today's video, we're going to be doing a new book called A Court of Roses, or A Court of Thorns and Roses. That's the name of it right then and there. I had asked you guys in the comments if you guys wanted to continue doing Haunting Adeline or did you want to do a new book? And I was taking book suggestions as well, and this one got recommended a lot. So this one and another one that got recommended, and this one's the one I chose to do, so I'm excited to get into a new book today. Without further ado, though, we always have our thread, and then we'll hop into this book, and we'll see what goes on. All right? But today's thread is, what was the most awkward NSFW moment of your life? All right? Let's get into it. At a lifestyle club enjoying the pool in the nude, I noticed someone floating by the stairs who isn't moving. Being a former lifeguard and advanced first aid certified, I rushed over. This woman is unconscious. I try to wake her, do a sternum rub and no pain response. She's breathing but unresponsive, so I call for help while holding her to make sure she doesn't go underwater. Someone calls 911. Someone else finds the friend she was with. Paramedics arrive. I explain the situation and they take her away. Management comes over to talk to me, thank me for my help, and have me fill out an incident report for their records. At some point during this whole ordeal, I remembered I'm naked, and this is a bizarre situation. Okay. I mean, I guess homeboy's fight or flight just kicked into gear, and he was just like, oh shit, I gotta do something, and not realizing, your dick is out, bro. And I'm surprised nobody told him. Now, was it a thing where they thought maybe, him and her were, you know what I mean? Maybe. And he just forgot. I'm just surprised. Once the paramedics arrived and, she got taken away, it's just like, hey, yo, man, here's some shorts. Is something like that. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Hey, I mean, at least you did the right thing. All right, I was at Sephora trying to buy something. I don't wear a lot of makeup at all, but I had the FabFitRun boxes, and something came in there that I actually liked. Sephora was the only place I could think of for a replacement, but I was smart and took a picture of the product, went to show her, and swiped the wrong way, and there happened to be a picture of my boobs. I'm fairly certain time stopped. I said, now that we know each other this closely, can you help me find this? Yo! No! Oh! And showed her the right picture. I haven't been back since. Oh! That's why you get the picture there first. You don't just be swiping through your shit. She had her booby nudes, man. She had her booby nudes. At least it was a girl and not a dude. Now, if it was a dude, that probably would have been tough. That would have been tough. Man. Oh. All right. I was at one of those on-land surfing thingies at a water park. Lost my footing and got caught in the water. My shorts slid all the way to my knees. I am holding them with one hand, trying to stand up with the other, and drowning in front of my wife and kids. God damn. Not only Not only is my man's fighting for his life, but his dick is out the whole time. Like, yo. My man's is fighting for his life, and his dick is just out, and he's like, no. Oh my God, bro. I don't know who was more embarrassed, me or the teens operating the ride. There I was, full moon on display, trying to cover my peen and pull my soaking wet shorts up while coughing out gallons of water. Oh, homeboy was fighting for his life and his dick is out and he's just like, I don't know whether to stop myself from drowning or to cover myself up. Like, shit. Oh, that is funny. Oh, poor guy. Poor guy. That is funny, though. Her dad walked in a second after I shot my load on her face. Oh, I was genuinely tempted to let him grab his shotgun and put me out of my misery right then and there. He told her mom she thought it was fucking hilarious. Oh, imagine you're just like defacing his daughter. Like, dude, you're defacing his daughter, like, right there. And homeboy is just like, I would never be able to see my daughter the same way. I would just be like, Lord have mercy on me, because I want to kill this kid, but I understand. It's like, my daughter wanted this, so I can't be, I can't be mad. Like, she wanted this, you know what I mean? It's not like she was forced to, that's tough. That's tough. Oh my God. My wife and I met when we were in high school. We had sex every chance we got as we didn't get to see each other often outside of school. One time we were at my house and just finished up. I was thirsty and thought the coast was clear to go to the kitchen and get some water naked. As soon as I walked out, my mom came out of her room and saw. I quickly ducked behind the couch and crawled back to my room. My wife still likes to bring it up. I mean, I don't know if your mom actually saw you, but hopefully not, because that would have been awkward as hell. At the same time, though, I mean, your mom probably heard everything, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. She's probably just like, all right, well, I haven't heard anything in a while. Maybe the coast is clear to come out. Like, the coast is clear, and your dumb ass is over here getting water naked. Like, bro, put something on. You know what I mean? At least put your shorts on. You ain't gotta put your drawers on, but put some shorts on or something if you're gonna walk out of the room. Like, god damn, man. I was in the middle of a run in the summer of 2005. Hot day, 7 miles into a 12-miler. I really needed to go number 2, and I found a little restroom to use at a park. An old man in his 70s follows me in. There are no doors on the stalls. He asks me a series of very personal questions as he watches me take a shit. Never looking away from me, I went as quick as I could and got out of there. It was weird in the moment, but it was really gross to think about later as I processed it. What? So mans is just dookie-ing, and this old man is just having a full-blown conversation with you. Like, what the hell? He was like, hey, man, how's it going? He's like, good? He's like, oh, man. He's like, it's a beautiful day out, isn't it? A bit hot, though. He's like, yeah, it's a bit hot. Like, you don't smell that? you don't smell this hot dookie, bro? Like, come on, man. Like, what are we doing here? Like this dookie's been cooking for 7 miles. Like, you don't smell this, man? Like, come on, bro. Give me a little privacy. Like, I don't mind the conversation. That's fine. But you don't got to be making eye contact with me as I'm dookieing. Like, come on, dude. That's crazy. Oh, I swear, old people they ain't got just no fucks given, man. The fucks are just gone, bro. They're just gone. All right, partner aimed for my mouth, was a bit too far away, ended up jizzing inside my nose. Oh, what the hell? Okay, I bet that was weird. You had to sit there and blow jizz out of your nose. Like, all right. I fucked a girl once and was being super quiet and was like, something wrong. And she was like, well, my ex was just bigger than you, so it doesn't feel as great. Boy, I was mad. Yo. Oh. God damn. You don't have to do them like that. You could have faked it. You know what I mean? Like, you could have just faked it and then never called me back. Like, bruh, you don't have to do all that. Oh, that's crazy. He was pounding it, hit just the right angle, and I yelled, "That's the ticket." I mean, afterwards, yeah, that in the moment, nah, I don't think in the moment saying that's the ticket would have been embarrassing. Maybe for her, but I think afterwards it'd be something you could laugh about and just be like, "Whoo, oh, that's the ticket," you know? And she's like, "No, you heard that." Like, I don't think that's really awkward, but I guess in a way it could be. Probably when I was like 14, feeling a pair of boobies for the first time, and her mom walked in. Oh, that's gotta suck, man. He was just like, "Let's go, second base." The mom walks in and just like, "What are you guys doing?" We're playing doctor. Let's see. Oh, my guy. When she says deeper, and I was already all the way in. Damn. God damn. Didn't have to do my boy like that. Like, damn, son. Oh. All right. I deep-throated him while he came, but he kept coming so much that I choked, and it came out of my nose. Oh. That must be disgusting. Like, like, what in the hell? Like, yeah, that is known as a white dragon. Oh, I went camping with a bunch of friends, and we all slept in the same tent. My brother was with us, and he ended up hooking up very intensely and hardcore with a girl while they were less than a foot away from all of us. I woke up to a kick in the head after hearing loud moaning, and I couldn't fall back asleep. They changed positions, did mouth stuff, and there were these horrible sloppy noises for over 2 hours. They probably started hooking up at 2 a.m. and finished when the sun rose, and I was awake pretending to be asleep for just about all of it. I swear, I think I felt cum hit my sleeping bag near the end. Once they finished banging, a friend in the group played birthday sex on his phone. I applauded the two, mentioning his favorite moments and how he was proud of both of them as I awkwardly continued to pretend sleeping. The most awkward night of my life. Oh, dude, I would have crawled out of that tent, man. I would have just silently unzipped that bitch, and I would have just crawled out, army military style, and just crawled about that bitch. I would have slept outside, man. Fuck that. I'll deal with the buggies. I ain't dealing with that. Nah. I would have been outside. I'm sorry, man. Nah. No. I would have made me a little fire, and I would have slept outside. Not me, Chief. Not me. Post-divorce dalliances, sweet guy. After we finally get to fool around, and suddenly he whispers, "Stop." I stopped and looked up to see as he was as white as a ghost. "What's wrong?" I asked, and he placed his hand on his chest. I could feel his heart racing as fast as a heart could possibly beat. His eyes were closed now, and he whispers, "Arrhythmia. Where is your medicine?" I asked calmly. "At home." Took a while for him to regain normal heart rate. I wanted to call an ambulance, but he said no. On follow-up, he described our interaction as a 12. I thought we were warming up around a 4. We agreed any further dating might kill him and remained friends for a long time. Damn, man, that's gotta suck. He's just like, she's just like, "Oh, I think we should be friends because, like, you might die." And he's just like, but I'm willing to take the chance. Like, man, like if Jesus is going to take me, I better be in some sweet walls when he does. Like, come on, man. I think that's it. I think that would be the golden way any guy would want to go, you know? He's in some coochie and it just dies. Like, I did it right. Like, I'm just saying. Hey, man. Oh boy, here we go. I was in my mid-20s, had just moved back in with my parents after a bad breakup. At the time, I was hooking up with this cop, nothing serious, a whole lot of fun. Went to meet him one day and threw a variety of things in my trunk, sex toys, cum-stained slutty panties, a lot of it. Spent most of the night, had fun, threw everything in my trunk, got home and crawled into bed. Woke up later the next day to go downstairs and there was a whole lot of my childhood stuffed animals in the back window of my car, like lining the window. My dad looked at me like a broken man and mumbled something about how he decided to clean and detail the cars and had spent the morning working on mine. He sounded so dejected when he said, "And remember, you'll always be my little girl." I couldn't make eye contact with him for several weeks after. Oh, dude. He was just like, oh my God, what has my daughter gotten herself into? He was like, Dolores, we created a freak. What is going on? And mom's just like, oh, wow. Wow. That's a lot. When did she get into this? You know, and it's just like, I don't know, Dolores. What happened? What did we do? What did we do wrong? Like, what is this? Oh my goodness. They were probably thinking the worst. Oh, they're probably thinking the worst. You know, they're just like, what is this? I'm sure I give it to her. I can understand why she was like, I could not look at my dad because dad's just broken. Dad is heartbroken. He was like, that's my girl. That's my little girl. And she's into this? Like, what the fuck? It's like, what is this thing? Oh, no. Just waving her dildos around. Like, what is this? No. Had sex with someone in open relationships. 3/4 of the way into the second round, she asked if I want to stick around to watch that Mitchell and Webb show once we're done. Baffled but not really opposed, I agree, and we finish up. We were on the couch. Her husband comes home. Cue the most awkward 45 minutes of my life while we all sit in mostly silence watching British comedy programming. That would be kind of weird. I mean, at least, you know, it's an open relationship situation and both parties are cool. It's not like the husband comes home and if he finds you, you know, he's gonna fucking try to kill you. But it would be awkward because it's just like they're married. I just smashed his wife. Like, is everything actually cool or is, you know, is something about to go down I don't know about, you know what I mean? That would be awkward, but I mean, you know, when you got it set up and everything is fine, I don't see anything wrong with it, you know? Yeah, because it's just like, hey, I can see how that would be very, very awkward though, because I would just be thinking in the back of my mind like, all right, when is this shit about to hit the fan? When is this dude about to flip on me, you know? Or is it going to be a thing where when I leave, you know, he's all just like, what the fuck, bitch? You fucked him? I don't know. So much stuff would just be going through my head. It would be crazy. I was very naive at 18. I wanted to give my boyfriend a BJ, so I literally blew on it. He asked me what I was doing, and I said, I'm giving you a BJ. He laughed so hard. Oh, no. She didn't even try to look it up first. Like, at least try to look it up first. Not just, okay, I guess guys like it when you blow air on their penis. Like, facts. I can do that. Like, what a girl's freaking out about. Like, fantastic. And he was just like, babe, oh, I want to give you a BJ. He was probably like, let's go. And she's over here just like, and he's like, the fuck are you doing? She's like, what do you mean? This is a BJ, right? And he's like, no, not even close. And she's like, yeah, that's what it is. It's called a blow job, right? You just blow on it. Like, I heard guys love this. It's like, no, sweetheart, that is not what it is. It's okay. It's totally fine. But that's not what it is. Oh, my God. That's funny. I was about to go down on a girl, and the smell was so bad, I slid myself off the bed and pretended I hit my balls badly on the footboard on my way down. Oh, he had to pull out of that one real quick. He was like, I'm sorry, my boys, but you're going to have to take one for the team because, I think he said he pretended. Yeah, he said he pretended on that, but, he had to sell it. He was just like, oh, my balls. Oh, I slipped. Like, oh. And that must have been rough. He must have just been like, oh, yeah, I'm so into this. Gets down there and he's like, Jesus. Oh, God. Like, why? Why does the smell so bad? Like, damn, girl. You shower? Like, shit. Probably when I accidentally sent a dick pic meant for my girlfriend to my dad. Yo. Oh, when I was like 18. How did you fuck that one up, bro? Like, dude, how did you fuck that one up? Oh, that's tough. That's tough, my guy. I bet his dad was just like, hey, man, I don't roll that way. Drunk, horny, banging a girl in the kitchen. Her dad walks in, socks me in the face, nose bleeding. My dick is flopping around. 'Twas a mess. Damn. He said, I don't give a fuck if you naked, man. We fighting. I'm about to smack you up. Like, yo. Damn. All right, we'll do two more. I was in Sicily, and it was a hot day. I was wearing a military uniform, so it made it even hotter. I gambled on a fart, then panic set in. Oh my God, did I shart, or is my ass sweaty? So I thought I'd better go do a courtesy wipe and get this figured out. Went to the bathroom, and I vividly remember locking the door. I didn't bother sitting down because I was just wiping, so I pulled my pants down, some bent over, wiped, and motherfucker, door blast open. I turned my head and see this Italian guy closing his eyes as hard as he could and kept saying, Mamma Mia. So he got a front row seat of my starfish and coin purse. God damn, man. He said, Mamma Mia. Homeboy opened that door and was just like, oh, Mamma Mia, no, please. What are you doing? You locked the door. What is wrong with you? What are you doing? I didn't want to see this. Like, God damn. He said, God damn, you got a full view of my freedom. All right. Girlfriend wanted to watch me finish on myself as we were laying on the bed. The cum shot out and went right into my eye. Oh, that sucks. He was like trying to be freaky for his girl, and then that just went wrong. I bet you she looked at you like, you're disgusting. Oh, God, that's terrible, man. That is terrible. That's going to be the last one for that thread for me. Goodness gracious. That was absolutely funny. You guys had some crazy stories, some wild and wacky shit, man. The threads are usually my favorite parts of all of the shows that we do, man. Goodness gracious. That was a good one. You guys let me know what you think about that one in the comments. And if you have a funny NSFW story, put it in the comments and share with everybody if you want to share. That is. I'm going to hop into announcements super duper quick, and then we will get to our first 2 chapters of A Court of Thorn and Roses. Patreon.com/MyLastPodcast. We're going to get an exclusive episode every single Friday, as well as being able to send in your scenario to be featured on Tuesdays, as well as Sunday shows. Get on to that. $3 a month, man. If you are primarily an audio listener, keep downloading as well as rating the podcast. Rating the podcast helps get new people in here and continue our community of awesome people, of you guys that come every Tuesday, Thursday, as well as Sunday to watch the show or listen to the show if you are a primary audio listener. Thank you guys so much for all the support you have actually shown. Downloading the show does show me that you guys support the show and that you guys are loving what we're doing over here. Follow us on TikTok as well as Instagram if you want to get clips and all the best parts of every single episode. If you don't have time for a full hour, got you, fam. TikTok and Instagram is the place to do it. Follow us over there. If you want to help even more on the free 99 side of things, subscribing to us on YouTube helps out a lot, all right? It helps out a lot. And even if you don't watch over on YouTube, just hitting the subscribe button helps out a lot. And I appreciate you guys so much. But without further ado, we're going to get into our first 2 chapters of A Court of Thorn and Roses. I don't know what this book is about. I don't know what this book has going on. I just heard that it was a really good book, and a lot of people recommended it to me. Is it going to be as crazy and raunchy as Haunting Adeline, or is it going to be more of a tame kind of action-y book? I don't know. Like I said, I've never read this book or anything like that. It was recommended to me by you guys, the peoples. And yeah. So let's get into it without further ado. Shlabang. And all right. And before we start, yes, this book will have its own playlist. I will be creating a Spotify playlist for this book, as well as a YouTube playlist for everyone. So that way, just like we did for Haunting Adeline, where you'll have all the Haunting Adeline episodes in one playlist, this book will be no different. We will have one playlist for Spotify as well as as well as YouTube. So that way, if you audio listeners can check out the book, and you guys don't have to scroll through all the episodes trying to find just this book's episodes or just Haunting Adeline episodes, and you can watch from beginning to end. Okay. But without further ado, let's get into chapters 1 and 2 of A Court of Thorn and Roses. Let's get into it.
Chapter 1. The forest had become a labyrinth of snow and ice. I'd been monitoring the parameters of the thicket for an hour, and my vantage point in the crook of a tree branch had turned useless. The gusting wind blew thick flurries to sweep away my tracks, but buried along with them any signs of potential quarry. Hunger had brought me farther from home than I usually risked, but winter was the hard time. The animals had pulled in, going deeper into the woods than I could follow, leaving me to pick off stragglers one by one, praying they'd last until spring. They hadn't. I wiped my numb fingers over my eyes, brushing away the flakes clinging to my lashes. Here there were no telltale trees stripped of bark to mark the deer's passing. They hadn't yet moved on. They would remain until the bark ran out, then travel north past the wolves' territory and perhaps into the fairylands of Prythian, where no mortals would dare go, not unless they had a death wish. A shudder skittered down my spine at the thought, and I shoved it away, focusing on my surroundings, on the task ahead. That was all I could do, all I'd been able to do for years, focus on surviving the week, the day, the hour ahead. And now, with the snow, I'd be lucky to spot anything, especially from my position up in the tree, scarcely able to see 15 feet ahead. Stifling a groan as my stiff limbs protested at the movement, I unstrung my bow before easing off the tree. The icy snow crunched under my fraying boots, and I ground my teeth. Low visibility, unnecessary noise. I was well on my way to yet another fruitless hunt. Only a few hours of daylight remained. If I didn't leave soon, I'd have to navigate my way home in the dark, and the warnings of the town hunters still rang fresh in my mind. Giant wolves were on the prowl, and in numbers. Not to mention whispers of strange folk spotted in the area, tall and eerie and deadly. Anything but fairies, the hunters had beseeched our long-forgotten gods, and I had secretly prayed alongside them. In the 8 years we'd been living in our village, 2 days' journey from the immortal border of Prithian, we'd been spared an attack, though traveling peddlers sometimes brought stories of distant border towns left in splinters and bones and ashes. These accounts, once rare enough to be dismissed by the village elders as hearsay, had in recent months become commonplace whisperings on every market day. I had risked much in coming so far into the forest, but we'd finished our last loaf of bread yesterday, and the remainder of our dried meat the day before. Still, I would have rather spent another night with a hungry belly than found myself satisfying the appetite of a wolf or a fairy. Not that there was much of me to feast on. I'd turned gangly by this time of year and could count a good number of my ribs. Moving as nimbly and quietly as I could between the trees, I pushed a hand against my hollow and aching stomach. I knew the expression that would be on my 2 elder sisters' faces when I returned to our cottage, empty-handed yet again. After a few minutes of careful searching, I crouched in a cluster of snow-heavy brambles. Through the thorns, I had a half-decent view of a clearing and a small brook flowing through it. A few holes in the ice suggested it was still frequently used. Hopefully something would come by. Hopefully. I sighed through my nose, digging the tip of my bow into the ground, and leaned my forehead against the crude curve of wood. We wouldn't last another week without food, and too many families had already started begging for me to hope for handouts from the wealthier townsfolk. I'd witnessed firsthand exactly how far their charity went. I eased into a more comfortable position and calmed my breathing, straining to listen to the forest over the wind. The snow fell and fell, dancing and curling like sparkling spindrifts, the white fresh and clean against the brown and gray of the world. And despite myself, despite my numb limbs, I quieted that restless, vicious part of my mind to take in the snow-veiled woods. Once it had been second nature to savor the contrast of new grass against dark, tilled soil, or an amethyst brooch nestled in the folds of emerald silk. Once I dreamed and breathed and thought in color and light and shape. Sometimes I would even indulge in envisioning a day when my sisters were married and it was only me and Father, with enough food to go around, enough money to buy some paint, and enough time to put those colors and shapes down on paper or canvas or the cottage walls. Not likely to happen anytime soon, perhaps ever. So I was left with moments like this, admiring the glint of pale winter light on snow. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done it, bothered to notice anything lovely or interesting. Stolen hours in a decrepit barn with Isaac Hale didn't count. Those times were hungry and empty and sometimes cruel, but never lovely. The howling wind calmed into a soft sighing. The snow fell lazily now, in big fat clumps that gathered along every nook and bump of the trees. Mesmerizing, the lethal, gentle beauty of the snow. I'd soon have to return to the muddy, frozen roads of the village, to the cramped heat of our cottage. Some small, fragmented part of me recoiled at the thought. Bushes rustled across the clearing. Drawing my bow was a matter of instinct. I peered through the thorns, and my breath caught. Less than 30 paces away stood a small doe, not yet too scrawny from winter, but desperate enough to wrench bark from a tree in the clearing. A deer like that could feed my family for a week or more. My mouth watered. Quiet as the wind hissing through dead leaves, I took aim. She continued tearing off strips of bark, chewing slowly, utterly unaware that her death waited yards away. I could dry half the meat, and we could immediately eat the rest. Stews, pies. Her skin could be sold, or perhaps turned into clothing for one of us. I needed new boots, but Elaine needed a new cloak. And Nesta was prone to crave anything someone else possessed. My fingers trembled. So much food. Such salvation. I took a steadying breath, double-checking my aim. But there was a pair of golden eyes shining from the brush adjacent to mine. The forest went silent. The wind died. Even the snow paused. We mortals no longer kept gods to worship, but if I had known their lost names, I would have prayed to them, all of them. Concealed in the thicket, the wolf inched closer, its gaze set on the oblivious doe. He was enormous, the size of a pony, and though I'd been warned about their presence, my mouth turned bone dry. But worse than his size was his unnatural stealth. Even as he inched closer in the brush, he remained unheard, unspotted by the doe. No animal that massive could be so quiet. But if he was no ordinary animal, if he was of Prithian origin, if he was somehow a fairy, then being eaten was the least of my concerns. If he was a fairy, I should already be running. Yet, maybe it would be a favor to the world, to my village, to myself, to kill him while I remained undetected. Putting an arrow through his eye would be no burden. But despite his size, he looked like a wolf, moved like a wolf. Animal, I reassured myself. Just an animal. I didn't let myself consider the alternative, not when I needed my head clear, my breathing steady. I had a hunting knife and 3 arrows. The first 2 were ordinary arrows, simple and efficient, and likely no more than bee stings to a wolf that size. But the 3rd arrow, the longest and heaviest one, I'd bought from a traveling peddler during a summer when we'd had enough coppers for extra luxuries. An arrow carved from mountain ash, armed with an iron head. From songs sung to us as lullabies over our cradles, we all knew from infancy that fairies hated iron, but it was the ash wood that made their immortal healing magic falter long enough for a human to make a killing blow. Or so legend and rumor claimed. The only proof we had of the ash's effectiveness was its sheer rarity. I'd seen drawings of the trees, but never one with my own eyes. Not after the High Fae had burned them all long ago. So few remained, most of them small and sickly, and hidden by the nobility within high-walled groves. I'd spent weeks after my purchase debating whether the overpriced bit of wood had been a waste of money or a fake, and for 3 years the ash arrow had sat unused in my quiver. Now I drew it, keeping my movements minimal, efficient. Anything to avoid that monstrous wolf looking in my direction. The arrow was long and heavy enough to inflict damage, possibly kill him if I aimed right. My chest became so tight it ached. And in that moment, I realized my life boiled down to one question. Was the wolf alone? I gripped my bow and drew the string farther back. I was a decent shot, but I'd never faced a wolf. I'd thought it made me lucky, even blessed, but now I didn't know where to hit or how fast they moved. I couldn't afford to miss. Not when I had only one ash arrow. And if it was indeed a fairy's heart pounding under that fur, then good riddance. Good riddance, after all their kind had done to us. I wouldn't risk this one later creeping into our village to slaughter and maim and torment. Let him die here and now. I'd be glad to end him. The wolf crept closer, and a twig snapped beneath one of his paws, each bigger than my hand. The doe went rigid. She glanced to either side, ears straining toward the gray sky. With the wolf's downwind position, she couldn't see or smell him. His head lowered, and his massive silver body, so perfectly blended into the snow and shadows, sank onto its haunches. The doe was still staring in the wrong direction. I glanced from the doe to the wolf and back again. At least he was alone. At least I'd been spared that much. But if the wolf scared the doe off, I was left with nothing but a starving, oversized wolf, possibly a fairy looking for the next best meal. And if he killed her, destroying precious amounts of hide and fat, if I judged wrongly, my life wasn't the only one that would be lost. But my life had been reduced to nothing but risks these past 8 years that I'd been hunting in the woods, and I'd picked correctly most of the time. Most of the time. The wolf shot from the brush in a flash of gray and white and black, his yellow fangs gleaming. He was even more gargantuan in the open, a marvel of muscle and speed and brute strength. The doe didn't stand a chance. I fired the ash arrow before he destroyed much else of her. The arrow found its mark in his side, and I could have sworn the ground itself shuddered. He barked in pain, releasing the doe's neck as his blood sprayed on the snow, so ruby bright. He whirled toward me, those yellow eyes wide, hackles raised. His low growl reverberated in the empty pit of my stomach as I surged to my feet, snow churning around me, another arrow drawn. But the wolf merely looked at me, his maw stained with blood. My ash arrow protruding so vulgarly from his side. The snow began falling again. He looked, and with a sort of awareness and surprise that made me fire the second arrow, just in case that intelligence was of the immortal, wicked sort. He didn't try to dodge the arrow as it went clean through his wide yellow eye. He collapsed to the ground. His legs were twitching as a low whine sliced through the wind. Impossible. He should be dead, not dying. The arrow was through his eye, almost to the goose fletching. But wolf or fairy, it didn't matter. Not with that ash arrow buried in his side. He'd be dead soon enough. Still, my hands shook as I brushed off snow and edged closer, still keeping a good distance. Blood gushed from the wounds I'd given him, staining the snow crimson. He pawed at the ground, his breath already slowing. Was he in much pain, or was his whimper just his attempt to shove death away? I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The snow swirled around us. I stared at him until that coat of charcoal and obsidian and ivory ceased rising and falling. Wolf. Definitely just a wolf, despite his size. The tightness in my chest eased, and I loosed a sigh, my breath clouding in front of me. At least the ash arrow had proved itself to be lethal, regardless of who or what it took down. A rapid examination of the doe told me I could carry only one animal, and even that would be a struggle. But it was a shame to leave the wolf. Though it wasted precious minutes during which any predator could smell the fresh blood, I skinned him and cleaned my arrows as best I could. If anything, it warmed my hands. I wrapped the bloody side of his pelt around the doe's death wound before I hoisted her across my shoulders. It was several miles back to our cottage, and I didn't need a trail of blood leading every animal with fangs and claws straight to me. Grunting against the weight, I grasped the legs of the deer and spared a final glance at the steaming carcass of the wolf. His remaining golden eye now stared at the snow-heavy sky, and for a moment I wished I had it in me to feel remorse for the dead thing. But this was the forest, and it was winter. Chapter 2. The sun had set by the time I exited the forest, my knees shaking. My hands, stiff from clenching the legs of the deer, had gone utterly numb miles ago. Not even the carcass could ward off the deepening chill. The world was awash in hues of dark blue, interrupted only by shafts of buttery light escaping from the shuttered windows of our dilapidated cottage. It was like striding through a living painting, a fleeting moment of stillness, the blues swiftly shifting to solid darkness. As I trudged up the path, each step fueled only by near-dizzying hunger, my sisters' voices fluttered out to meet me. I didn't need to discern their words to know they were most likely chattering about some young man or the ribbons they'd spotted in the village when they should have been chopping wood, but I smiled a bit nonetheless. I kicked my boots against the stone door frame, knocking the snow from them. Bits of ice came free from the gray stones of the cottage, revealing the faded ward markings etched around the threshold. My father had once convinced a passing charlatan to trade the engravings against fairy harm in exchange for one of his wood carvings. There was so little that my father was ever able to do for us that I hadn't possessed the heart to tell him the engravings were useless and undoubtedly fake. Mortals didn't possess magic, didn't possess any of the superior strength and speed of the fairies or high fae. The man, claiming some high fae blood in his ancestry, had just carved the whorls and swirls and runes around the door and windows, muttered a few nonsense words, and ambled on his way. I yanked open the wooden door, the frozen iron handle biting my skin like an asp. Heat and light blinded me as I stepped inside. "Farah?" Elaine's soft gasp scraped past my ears, and I blinked back the brightness of the fire to find my second eldest sister before me. Though she was bundled in a threadbare blanket, her gold-brown hair, the hair all three of us had, was coiled perfectly about her head. 8 years of poverty hadn't stripped from her the desire to look lovely. "Where did you get that?" The undercurrent of hunger honed her words into a sharpness that had become too common in recent weeks. No mention of the blood on me. I'd long since given up hope of them actually noticing whether I came back from the woods every evening, at least until they got hungry again. But then again, my mother hadn't made them swear anything when they stood beside her deathbed. I took a calming breath as I slung the doe off my shoulders. She hit the wooden table with a thud. rattling a ceramic cup on its other end. "Where do you think I got it?" My voice had turned hoarse, each word burning as it came out. My father and Nesta still silently warmed their hands by the hearth, my eldest sister ignoring him, as usual. I peeled the wolf pelt from the doe's body, and after removing my boots and setting them by the door, I turned to Elaine. Her brown eyes, my father's eyes, remained pinned on the doe. "Will it take you long to clean it?" Me. Not her, not the others. I'd never once seen their hands sticky with blood and fur. I'd only learned to prepare and harvest my kills thanks to the instruction of others. Elaine pushed her hand against her belly, probably as empty and aching as my own. It wasn't that Elaine was cruel. She wasn't like Nesta, who had been born with a sneer on her face. Elaine sometimes just didn't grasp things. It wasn't meanness that kept her from offering to help. It simply never occurred to her that she might be capable of getting her hands dirty. I'd never been able to decide whether she actually didn't understand that we were truly poor, or if she just refused to accept it. It still hadn't stopped me from buying her seeds for the flower garden she tended in the milder months, whenever I could afford it. And it hadn't stopped her from buying me 3 small tins of paint, red, yellow, and blue, during that same summer I'd had enough to buy the ash arrow. It was the only gift she'd ever given me, and our house still bore the marks of it, even if the paint was now fading and chipped. Little vines and flowers along the windows and thresholds and edges of things. Tiny curls of flame on the stones bordering the hearth. Any spare minutes I'd had that bountiful summer I used to bedeck our house in color, sometimes hiding clever decorations inside drawers, behind the threadbare curtains, underneath the chairs and table. We hadn't had a summer that easy since.
"Vera?"
My father's deep rumble came from the fire. His dark beard was neatly trimmed, his face spotless, like my sister's.
"What luck you had today, in bringing us such a feast."
From beside my father, Nesta snorted. Not surprising. Any bit of praise for anyone, me, Elaine, other villagers, usually resulted in her dismissal. Any word from our father usually resulted in her ridicule as well. I straightened, almost too tired to stand, but braced a hand on the table beside the dough as I shot Nesta a glare. Of us, Nesta had taken the loss of our fortune the hardest. She had quietly resented my father from the moment we'd fled our manor. Even after that awful day, one of the creditors had come to show just how displeased he was at the loss of his investment. But at least Nesta didn't fill our heads with useless talk of regaining our wealth, like my father. No, she just spent whatever money I didn't hide from her, and rarely bothered to acknowledge my father's limping presence at all. Some days I couldn't tell which of us was the most wretched and bitter. "We can eat half the meat this week," I said, shifting my gaze to the dough. The deer took up the entirety of the rickety table that served as our dining area, workspace, and kitchen. "We can dry the other half," I went on, knowing that no matter how nicely I phrased it, I'd still do the bulk of it. "And I'll go to the market tomorrow and see how much I can get for the hides," I finished, more to myself than to them. No one bothered to confirm they'd heard me anyway. My father's ruined leg was stretched out before him, as close to the fire's heat as it could get. The cold or the rain or a change in temperature always aggravated the vicious, twisted wounds around his knee. His simply carved cane was propped up against his chair, a cane he'd made for himself, and that Nesta was sometimes prone to leaving far out of his reach. "He could find work if he wasn't so ashamed," Nesta always said when I hissed about it. She hated him for the injury, too, for not fighting back when that creditor and his thugs had burst into the cottage and smashed his knee again and again. Nesta and Elaine had fled into the bedroom, barricading the door. I had stayed, begging and weeping through every scream of my father, every crunch of bone. I'd soiled myself, and then vomited right on the stones before the hearth. Only then did the men leave. We never saw them again. We'd used a massive chunk of our remaining money to pay for the healer. It had taken my father 6 months to even walk, a year before he could go a mile. The coppers he brought in when someone pitied him enough to buy his wood carvings weren't enough to keep us fed. 5 years ago, when the money was well and truly gone, when my father still wouldn't move much about, he hadn't argued when I announced that I was going hunting. He hadn't bothered to attempt to stand from his seat by the fire, hadn't bothered to look up from his wood carving. He just let me walk into those deadly, eerie woods that even the most seasoned hunters were wary of. He'd become a little more aware now, sometimes offered signs of gratitude, sometimes hobbled all the way into town to sell his carvings, but not much. "I'd love a new cloak," Elaine said at last with a sigh. At the same moment, Nesta rose and declared, "I need a new pair of boots." I kept quiet, knowing better than to get in the middle of one of their arguments, but I glanced at Nesta's still shiny pair by the door. Beside hers, my 2 small boots were falling apart at the seams, held together only by fraying laces. "But I'm freezing with my raggedy old cloak," Elaine pleaded. "I'll shiver to death." She fixed her wide eyes on me and said, "Please, Feyre." She drew out the 2 syllables of my name, Feyre, into the most hideous whine I'd ever endured, and Nesta loudly clicked her tongue before ordering her to shut up. I drowned them out as they began quarreling over who would get the money the hide would fetch tomorrow, and found my father now standing at the table, one hand braced against it to support his weight as he inspected the deer. His attention slid to the giant wolf pelt. His fingers, still smooth and gentlemanly, turned over the pelt and traced a line through the bloody underside. I tensed. His dark eyes flicked to mine. "Feyre," he murmured, and his mouth became a tight line. "Where did you get this?" "The same place I got the deer," I replied with equal quiet, my words cool and sharp. His gaze traveled over the bow and quiver strapped to my back, the wooden-hilted hunting knife at my side. His eyes turned damp. "Feyre, the risk." I jerked my chin at the pelt, unable to keep the snap from my voice as I said, "I had no other choice." What I really wanted to say was, "You don't even bother to attempt to leave the house most days. Were it not for me, we would starve. Were it not for me, we'd be dead." "Feyre," he repeated, and closed his eyes. My sisters had gone quiet, and I looked up in time to see Nesta crinkle her nose with a sniff. She picked at my cloak. "You stink like a pig covered in its own filth. Can't you at least try to pretend that you're not an ignorant peasant?" I didn't let the sting and ache show. I'd been too young to learn more than the basics of manners and reading and writing when our family had fallen into misfortune, and she'd never let me forget it. She stepped back to run a finger over the braided coils of her gold-brown hair. "Take those disgusting clothes off." I took my time, swallowing the words I wanted to bark back at her. Older than me by 3 years, she somehow looked younger than I did, her golden cheeks always flushed with a delicate, vibrant pink. "Can you make a pot of hot water and add wood to the fire?" But even as I asked, I noticed the wood pile. There were only 5 logs left. "I thought you were going to chop wood today." Nesta picked at her long, neat nails. "I hate chopping wood. I always get splinters." She glanced up from beneath her dark lashes. Of all of us, Nesta looked most like our mother, especially when she wanted something. "Besides, Farah," she said with a pout, "you're just so much better at it. It takes you half the time it takes me. Your hands are suited for it. They're already so rough." My jaw clenched. "Please," I asked, calming my breathing, knowing an argument was the last thing I needed or wanted. "Please get up at dawn to chop that wood." I unbuttoned the top of my tunic. "Or we'll be eating a cold breakfast." Her brows narrowed. "I will do no such thing." But I was already walking toward the small second room where my sisters and I slept. Elaine murmured a soft plea to Nesta, which earned her a hiss in response. I glanced over my shoulder at my father and pointed to the deer. "Get the knives ready," I said, not bothering to sound pleasant. "I'll be out soon." Without waiting for an answer, I shut the door behind me. The room was large enough for a rickety dresser and the enormous ironwood bed we slept in. The sole remnant of our former wealth, it had been ordered as a wedding gift from my father to my mother. It was the bed in which we'd been born, and the bed in which my mother died. In all the painting I'd done to our house these past few years, I'd never touched it. I slung off my outer clothes onto the sagging dresser, frowning at the violets and roses I'd painted around the knobs of Elaine's drawer, the crackling flames I'd painted around Nesta's, and the night sky, whorls of yellow stars standing in for white, around mine. I'd done it to brighten the otherwise dark room. They'd never commented on it. I don't know why I'd ever expected them to. Groaning, it was all I could do to keep from collapsing onto the bed. We dined on roasted venison that night. Though I knew it was foolish, I didn't object when each of us had a small second helping until I declared the meat off limits. I'd spend tomorrow preparing the deer's remaining parts for consumption. Then I'd allot a few hours to currying up both hides before taking them to the market. I knew a few vendors who might be interested in such a purchase, though neither was likely to give me the fee I deserved. But money was money, and I didn't have the time or the funds to travel to the nearest large town to find a better offer. I sucked on the tines of my fork, savoring the remnants of fat coating the metal. My tongue slipped over the crooked prongs. The fork was part of a shabby set my father had salvaged from the servants' quarters while the creditors ransacked our manor home. None of our utensils matched, but it was better than using our fingers. My mother's dowry flatware had long since been sold. My mother. Imperious and cold with her children, joyous and dazzling among the peerage who frequented our former estate, doting on my father, the one person whom she truly loved and respected. But she had also truly loved parties, so much so that she didn't have time to do anything with me at all, save contemplate how my budding abilities to sketch and paint might secure me a future husband. Had she lived long enough to see our wealth crumble, she would have been shattered by it, more so than my father. Perhaps it was a merciful thing that she died. If anything, it left more food for us. There was nothing left of her in the cottage beyond the ironwood bed and the vow I'd made. Every time I looked toward a horizon or wondered if I should just walk and never look back, I'd hear that promise I made 11 years ago as she wasted away on her deathbed. Stay together and look after them. I'd agreed, too young to ask why she hadn't begged my elder sisters or my father. But I'd sworn it to her, and then she'd died. And in our miserable human world, shielded only by the promise made by the High Fae 5 centuries ago, in a world where we'd forgotten the names of our gods, a promise was law, a promise was currency, a promise was your bond. There were times when I hated her for asking that vow of me. Perhaps, delirious with fever, she hadn't even known what she was demanding. Or maybe impending death had given her some clarity about the true nature of her children, her husband. I set down the fork and watched the flames of our meager fire dance along the remaining logs, stretching out my aching legs beneath the table. I turned to my sisters. As usual, Nesta was complaining about the villagers. They had no manners, they had no social graces, they had no idea just how shoddy the fabric of their clothes was, even though they pretended that it was as fine as silk or chiffon. Since we had lost our fortune, their former friends dutifully ignored them, so my sisters paraded about as though the young peasants of the town made up a second-rate social circle. I took a sip from my cup of hot water. We couldn't even afford tea these days, as Nesta continued her story to Elaine. Well, I said to him, "If you think you can just ask me so nonchalantly, sir, I'm going to decline. And you know what Thomas said?" Arms braced on the table and eyes wide, Elaine shook her head. "Thomas Mandray?" I interrupted. "The woodcutter's second son?" Nesta's blue-gray eyes narrowed. "Yes," she said, and shifted to address Elaine again. "What does he want?" I glanced at my father. No reaction, no hint of alarm or sign that he was even listening. Lost to whatever fog of memory had crept over him, he was smiling mildly at his beloved Elaine, the only one of us who bothered to really speak to him at all. "He wants to marry her," Elaine said dreamily. I blinked. Nesta cocked her head. I'd seen predators use that movement before. I sometimes wondered if her unrelenting steel would have helped us better survive, thrive even, if she hadn't been so preoccupied with our lost status. "Is there a problem, Farah?" She flung my name like an insult, and my jaw ached from clenching it so hard. My father shifted in his seat, blinking, and though I knew it was foolish to react to her taunts, I said, "You can't chop wood for us, but you want to marry a woodcutter's son?" Nesta squared her shoulders. "I thought all you wanted was for us to get out of the house, to marry off me and Elaine so you can have enough time to paint your glorious masterpieces." She sneered at the pillar of foxglove I'd painted along the edge of the table. The colors too dark and too blue, with none of the white freckling inside the trumpets, but I'd made do, even if it had killed me not to have white paint, to make something so flawed and lasting. I drowned the urge to cover up the painting with my hand. Maybe tomorrow I'd just scrape it off the table altogether. "Believe me," I said to her, "the day you want to marry someone worthy, I'll march up to his house and hand you over, but you're not going to marry Thomas." Nesta's nostrils delicately flared. "There's nothing you can do. Claire Better told me this afternoon that Thomas is going to propose to me any day now, and then I'll never have to eat these scraps again." She added with a small smile, "At least I don't have to resort to rutting in the hay with Isaac Hale like an animal." My father let out an embarrassed cough, looking to his cot by the fire. He'd never said a word against Nesta, from either fear or guilt, and apparently he wasn't going to start now, even if this was the first he was hearing of Isaac. I laid my palms flat on the table as I stared her down. Elaine removed her hand from where it lay nearby, as if the dirt and blood beneath my fingernails would somehow jump onto her porcelain skin. Thomas's family is barely better off than ours, I said, trying to keep from growling. You'd be just another mouth to feed. If he doesn't know this, then his parents must. But Thomas knew. We'd run into each other in the forest before. I'd seen the gleam of desperate hunger in his eyes when he spotted me sporting a brace of rabbits. I'd never killed another human, but that day, my hunting knife had felt like a weight at my side. I'd kept out of his way ever since. We can't afford a dowry, I continued, and though my tone was firm, my voice quieted. For either of you. If Nesta wanted to leave, then fine. Good. I'd be one step closer to attaining that glorious, peaceful future, to attaining a quiet house and enough food and time to paint. But we had nothing, absolutely nothing to entice any suitor to take my sisters off my hands. We're in love, Nesta declared, and Elaine nodded her agreement. I almost laughed. When had they gone from mooning over aristos to making doe eyes at peasants? Love won't feed a hungry belly, I countered, keeping my gaze as sturdy as possible. As if I'd struck her, Nesta leaped from her seat on the bench. You're just jealous. I heard them saying how Isaac is going to marry some Greenfield village girl for a handsome dowry. So had I. Isaac had ranted about it the last time we'd met. Jealous, I said slowly, digging down deep to bury my fury. We have nothing to offer them. No dowry, no livestock even. While Thomas might want to marry you, you're a burden. What do you know? Nesta breathed. You're just a half-wild beast with the nerve to bark orders all hours of the day and night. Keep it up and someday, Feyre, you'll have no one left to remember you or care that you ever existed. She stormed off, Elaine darting after her, cooing her sympathy. They slammed the door to the bedroom hard enough to rattle the dishes. I'd heard the words before, and knew she only repeated them because I'd flinched that first time she spat them. They still burned anyway. I took a long sip from the chipped mug. The wooden bench beneath my father groaned as he shifted. I took another swallow and said, You should talk some sense into her. He examined a burn mark on the table. What can I say? If it's love, it can't be love. Not on his part. Not with his wretched family. I've seen the way he acts around the village. There's one thing he wants from her, and it's not her hand in... We need hope as much as we need bread and meat, he interrupted, his eyes clear for a rare moment. We need hope, or else we cannot endure. So let her keep this hope, Feyre. Let her imagine a better life, a better world. I stood from the table, fingers curling into fists, but there was nowhere to run in our two-room cottage. I looked at the discolored foxglove painting at the edge of the table. The outer trumpets were already chipped and faded. The lower bit of the stem rubbed off entirely. Within a few years, it would be gone, leaving no mark that it had ever been there, that I'd ever been there. When I looked at my father, my gaze was hard. There is no such thing.
All right. Well, that was chapters 1 and 2. I can tell this book is going to be a bit of a slow burn, if I'm being honest with you. But it's, I'm sure, going to get a little more interesting the more we get into the book. So that is only chapters 1 and 2, though. We're still at the beginning, so we'll see how things go. And you guys let me know if you are enjoying the book, or if you guys, want to see more of this one, or if you want to change it up through the middle. We'll see. We'll feel it out. Because I feel like Haunting Adeline right out the gate was kind of very interesting. This book I feel is a more slow burn into, what it's going to be and what it's building up to be. But we'll see. All right. We'll see. You guys, again, keep me posted in the comments. Let me know if you guys want to keep going with this one or you want to change it up. We could do that as well. But that's going to do it for me on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for being here and watching/listening. Again, patreon.com/Am I the Asshole Podcast. $3 a month gets you exclusive episode every single Friday, as well as being able to send your scenarios to be featured on Tuesdays and Sundays shows. Audio listeners, keep downloading the podcast as well as rating it 5 stars if you already haven't. And then subscribe to us on YouTube, follow on Instagram as well as TikTok. And we'll see you guys later. Peace.